Once upon a time, there was a duck. His name was Quaggers. Quaggers was swimming along one day and chanced upon a little island. And upon this island, there was a scorpion. Okay, I appreciate that this isn't a scorpion. This particular scorpion had been out in the sun for quite some time and he got a little sunburn and started to look like a lobster. Nevertheless, the scorpion was on this little island. We don't know how he got there because scorpions are really good at keeping secrets, especially about themselves. Quaggers popped up to the island and was like, "Oh, hello, Mr. Scorpion." And the scorpion was, "Oh, hi, Duck. Hi, Duck. I wonder if you could do me a wee favour. I desperately need to get off this island before I start to blister. Is there any chance you could take me to the shore on the other side?" Quaggers was like, "Well, I'm not so sure about this because you're a scorpion. Scorpions are pretty mean and, you'll sting me." And the scorpion was like, "Don't be silly. I'm not going to sting you. If you take me across, I'll do lots of nice things for you, like guard your eggs against that annoying bunny that paints them every springtime." Quaggers thought about this for a bit. "Nah, I still don't know about this. It seems a little bit dodgy, to be perfectly honest." And the scorpion tried to reason with him. He said, "Look, if I was to sting you, we'd both drown. And, well, we'd both die then, wouldn't we?" Quaggers thought about this. He was quite a philosophical duck, and he thought, okay. He was quite a good-natured duck as well, to be honest. And so he agreed to give the scorpion safe passage to the other side. So the scorpion jumped on his back, and off he swam. Quaggers started telling him about his life story, and yeah, they were getting on fine, until they were almost at the shore, and the scorpion stung Quaggers. With his dying breath, he tried to figure out why the scorpion had done this. "Scorpion, what have you done? Now we're both going to drown." And the scorpion just kind of shrugged his shoulders and went, "It's in my nature." He wasn't even sorry as well. That's the sad story of Quaggers, and I believe this scorpion's called Dr. Pembleton III. There you go. I am the Hidden Hermit. Today we are talking about Scorpio. So Scorpio, yeah, and I've got my Scorpio vibes going on here. Scorpio is, of course, a fixed water sign, so everything's blue. I'm burning some lovely sea breeze incense here, which is rather nice. Thank you very much. I've also got some Scorpio-esque rocks and gems, something dark and foreboding here, a bit of obsidian, a bit of sugarlight. I've also got some rainbow moonstone. You can't really tell the colours. It's very pretty. Just take it from me. It's very pretty. Some citrine. Also, I've got some unakite, which is also very, very lovely. So yeah, Scorpio. Scorpio is an utterly fascinating zodiac sign. Utterly fascinating. I'm completely absorbed with how interesting Scorpios are and their deal, basically. So here is Scorpio, and you can see that we've got a feminine scorpion image on the Barbieri zodiac card. As I've already said, here's another Scorpio card. Nice big scorpion there with the constellation of Scorpio, which I will talk about a bit more in a little moment. Scorpio is, of course, a water sign, as signified by the suit of cups in tarot. I've got a few cup cards here. That was the Waite-Smith, obviously. Here is the Tot, and here is a non-tarot card. Water is all about sensing, about your emotions, about your inner emotional life, and feelings like, well, anything emotional, really. I mean, anger is an emotion. Love is very much an emotion, and the suit of cups does tend to deal with things like love and friendship when we talk about the tarot. So Scorpio, absolutely fascinating. Scorpio in the tarot is signified by the Death card. And you may be thinking, wow, that's a really big Death card. In fact, it's so big, it doesn't fit in the screen. That is actually a print. Here is a fascinating Death card. This is a Night Sun, although it's not the Night Sun. This was bequeathed to me by the artist Fabio Lastrani. This is the first home print test run of the Night Sun. I'm extremely proud to own this. I do suspect that he made a mistake, but I'm not giving it back. I'm actually retiring the Night Sun deck for this particular zodiac video, but that's going to come apparent in a moment. So let's talk about zodiac. Let's talk about Scorpio. Scorpio is the 8th sign of the zodiac in the tropical system. It runs from approximately the 23rd of October to the 22nd of November, depending on the year. And yeah, Scorpio's a fascinating constellation. It's a huge constellation, and it's an ancient constellation as well. Its scholars often regard it as one of the original 6 massive constellations, going all the way back to the days of yore. Well, before the days of yore, before yore was even thought about. And Scorpio is a massive constellation, and it kind of hangs in fact, most of the time you can't see it all because it's so big. And yeah, it hasn't always been associated with scorpions, to be perfectly honest. Now, we call it Scorpio because of course, the Greeks and latterly the Romans. And the scorpion was sent, depending on which story. There are a couple of different myths regarding why the scorpion's in the sky. One of which is Artemis. When Orion the hunter tried to seduce Artemis, she got a little bit peeved off, sent a scorpion to kill him. The other myth is that Orion was boasting how he can kill any animal on the planet, and Gaia got a bit miffed at that, so she sent the scorpion to kill him, which the scorpion did. The scorpion was successful in bringing down Orion, despite the fact that Orion had, killed a lot of things in his time. This wee little scorpion, or lobster, came along, stung him, and he died. Very sad story. And the interesting thing is, when Orion is setting in the sky, when it's going down the western horizon, Scorpio is rising in the east. So it's a cool little myth that's going on there. Now, as I say, it's an ancient constellation, ancient. Indeed. Back in the day, it used to be much bigger. In fact, the constellation of Libra used to make up its claws. So Libra is sort of over here. I mean, this is only a part of Scorpio. You've got the sort of body, and then the tail comes up here, and there's a cracking wee triangle up there. And Libra's over here, and that used to be a part of Scorpion. Libra used to make up the claws. Some astrological scholars also suggest that the claws are holding the scales of justice, the scales of Libra. But yeah, it wasn't always associated with the scorpion. I believe it was back in the time of Abraham. He associated it with massive eagle, which is interesting. I should have pulled out the world card, but I haven't. It doesn't matter. So that was the Hebrew, the Abrahamic, if you like, thought of it as an eagle. The Hebrew astrologers, so just following Abraham, kind of associated it with a massive snake, or a basilisk, if you like, which is very, very interesting, and I'll refer back to that once we look at one of the cards. It was also named as the Great Sign or the Great Beast by early Greeks before Ptolemy came along and started documenting everything. Over in China, it was a part of the Azure Dragon, which became the Blue Emperor. The Great Fire, it was called. All sorts of interesting things, but interestingly, the Arabians, the Persians, the Arcadians always had it as a scorpion, or because of that massive sting that it has coming out from the actual constellation. And it is a big constellation. It's huge. It's incredibly resplendent, and it's beautiful. And I could go on about all the stuff that you could, because it's in a very busy part of the sky. You're looking into the Milky Way when you look at Scorpio. The one feature I do want to bring out is one of the royal Persian stars right in the middle here, Antares, the heart of the scorpion. Antares literally means like Mars, because it's a big red star. Of course, it's nothing like Mars. It's a red giant, approximately 170 light years away, and it's 400 times the size of our sun. So yeah, absolutely nothing like Mars. So that's Scorpio, the constellation for you. Now, Scorpio is also associated with the 8th house. The 8th house, again, as the Oh, that's the wrong card. I do apologise. The 8th house, just like the constellations, refers to things such as death and transformation. But yeah, I will talk more about that as I go through the rest of this video. So yes, now if you are a Scorpio, or if you have Scorpio rising, you may indeed feel a bit of affinity with some of the following traits. Now notice I say sun and rising. I think the moon in Scorpio is a little bit different, and the moon's not happy in Scorpio, to be perfectly honest. So you're getting those emotional depths when the moon is in Scorpio. So I'm focusing mostly on the sun sign and the ascendant. So Scorpios, they tend to be very vibrant people, very vibrant, magnetic personalities. They can be incredibly passionate as well. They've got a lot of depth, and they're complex. They're incredibly perceptive and alert, and they understand how both words, the spoken language and body language plays an important part. And like I say, they're very, very perceptive. They're curious, especially about people, because their insights into human psychology are incredibly astute, mostly because that Scorpios are very good at feeling an emotion, like feeling on a really deep level. They're fascinated by mysteries. They're incredibly determined and focused and resourceful. And they're very good at rejuvenating themselves as well. I mentioned secrets. They're incredibly good at drawing secrets out of people and keeping them. So providing you don't cross a Scorpio, your secret is safe with them. They also can come across as quite serious, and that could very well be because they are the fixed water sign. So they're quite stoic in their outlook, if you like. Some of the negative traits of Scorpio. The Scorpios can become incredibly obsessive, jealous. They can be very secretive. They're also great manipulators. They can come across as arrogant. And as I say, if you cross a Scorpio, you may be on the wrong end of a vengeance. They can be spiteful. They can be incredibly cold-hearted. And yeah, I think the general consensus is Scorpios can be rather unpleasant people, which I think is a little bit unfair. When Scorpios get incredibly introverted, I mean, they do like their privacy, but when things are tough, they can fall into depression. They examine their own psyche, if you like. So yeah, Scorpio is very much about intensity, about extremes. They like to live on the edge a little bit. But, having said all those very, very supposedly negative things, as I've already said, I think Scorpios are very fascinating. And I'll tell you a secret. Sometimes I wish I was a Scorpio, but don't tell everybody that, I guess. Okay, so let's go on to tarot. So I've already cracked out one of the death cards. Scorpio is indeed signified by death. And death, again, is one of those amazing... it's one of my favourite cards in the whole deck. This is the Waite-Smith. You have this figure on a white horse, and I believe the white horse is incredibly important. You're alluding to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. He's carrying a Rosicrucian cross, and you've got all these people. You've got a king with his scepter. You've got families, children. They're all in the ground, and there are associations with plague, indeed. But yeah, the death card, I'll speak about it more in a moment. It does not mean death. In fact, I think death is one of the most positive cards in the whole tarot deck, and I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of the death card in many, many decks as well. That's the Waite-Smith. Here is the top deck. In cracking image. And do you know what? There are a lot of decks that come along, and the death card's one of the ones I go straight to, because so many death cards in so many decks you're invariably the best card in the deck in terms of artistic depiction. And yes, here is the top deck, which is interesting. Here you have the Scorpion at the bottom. You also have the Serpent. As I said, when talking about the constellations, it was sometimes referred to as a basilisk. And interestingly, the constellation of Ophiuchus, Ophiuchus, I can't pronounce it, which is just to the left of Scorpio, the missing sun sign, if you like, is known as the serpent bearer. So indeed, yeah, you've got a connection there. You've also got the eagle up in the top here, so you've got the three sort of depictions of classical astronomy and astrology put right on the top card there. It is such a cracking image. It's an excellent death card. There's a lot going on. I do loves it. So as I say, I've retired the Night Sun just for this video, but I've replaced it with Fabio Lastrani's other deck, the Santa Muerte. Here is the Santa Muerte Death, actually called Santa Muerte. She is the one of the Mexican or Central American goddess of death. Interestingly, you have a connection here with both these. You both got scythes, because you know a lot of the time. The figure of death, the Grim Reaper, is carrying a scythe. Both these deaths are pregnant as well, which I think is fascinating. You're tapping into that idea of rebirth, which is the strongest thing that I love about the death card. In the Santa Muerte one, you know, she's looking at this crib. She's an expectant mother. She's looking forward. You know, she's actually enjoying the idea of bringing forth new life. As most mothers should, I guess. Here is my featured deck for this video is the Deviant Moon, and again you got another pregnant death. And well, she seems to be stomping on this child, but I like to think that it's more of a nurturing thing going on there. The Deviant Moon deck is an incredibly it's just got some cracking images, but you'll see a couple of them in the remainder of this video. I've also got the Hermetic Death here. I just wanted to reiterate the point of a scorpion and an eagle, and there is a serpent down here as well. So you know the astrological associations with the great constellations has not been forgotten by modern eyes, if you like. So now I'm going to talk about traditional and modern astrology a little bit. Here is the astrological wheel with the traditional planets on here. So, you know, we've got through the first half of the year and it's been quite straightforward, going from Aries through to Virgo. And then things get a little bit weird, to be honest, and things get confused. There are a lot of different attributes to different signs and different planets, and this is where that starts. Libra was so Virgo and Libra, they repeat the planet sequence going around, but once we get to Scorpio, the traditional planet that ruled Scorpio was Mars. But in modern eyes, in modern astrology, and indeed tarot, here is another Mars card. Let me just get through all the Mars cards. In modern astrology, Pluto is also associated. Hey, there's Pluto with Scorpio, which is fascinating. Now, the planet Mars in tarot is indeed signified by the tower. Here is the Deviant Moon Tower. What I really like about this, it does ape the Waite-Smith imagery quite well, but you have this sort of eye of the divine that's zapping the tower, that's causing this destruction and this massive change. Here is the Santa Muerte tarot card, and I love this. It's very reminiscent of the very famous Escher painting. There's a lot of confusion going on here. I mean, which way up does it go? What's going on? It's quite unfathomable. It's got an incredible amount of depth, and I haven't completely figured it out myself, but it is such a good tower card. Such a good tower card. We're still thinking about Mars. Here is the Tot Tower card. Again, incredibly striking. You have this eye of the divine. You've got all sorts of stuff going on here. It's amazing. You've got these really abstract figures that are falling from the tower. You've got fire-breathing monsters. You have serpents in the air. You've also got a dove of peace, which is fascinating. And the color scheme is very, very Martian. Very Martian. And so yeah, here is the Waite-Smith Tower. A classic image. And many people fear the tower. Well, I mean, you know, it comes up in a reading and you've got to expect some sort of catastrophic change in a way. It's casting out everything that is not serving you, and moving on with hope in your heart, I would have thought, or I would like to think. So this is the question I need to ask you at this point. How come Scorpio gets all the cool cards? Death and the Tower. I mean, just look at them. They're just incredibly striking images. As I have already mentioned, that's classical astrology, classical tarot systems. There's Mars in Scorpio, but Pluto has also been assigned to Scorpio in the modern world. Here is a Pluto card, and Pluto very much does ape the vibes of Scorpio, one of transformation. Pluto is, of course, the Roman equivalent of Hades, the god of the underworld. I'm going to show you another Pluto card. Ooh. Now, interestingly, the card assigned to Pluto in the tarot is a Judgment. So there's the Judgment card. Now, this is where things get even more tricky. Now, obviously, this is the Waite-Smith, and the Waite-Smith was produced and printed around 1908, 1909. It became a lot more commercially available in the following years, and Pluto wasn't even discovered until 1930-ish. So, originally, Judgment was assigned to the element of fire. Tarot scholars have assigned Pluto is important in astrology. You know, it brings forth great change, as does Scorpio. So Judgment indeed does kind of fit with it. It does fit because you have that idea of something coming to an end. And indeed, in the book of Revelations, for example, where the apocalypse comes and judgment is outlined, it does mark the end of one era, because there will be a new heaven and earth, and blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of Christian imagery in the Waite-Smith deck, as you probably know. Here is another Judgment card from the Deviant Moon. I just wanted to show it because it's just an awesome card. That's the same sort of image, the angel heralding a rapture and the dead coming back to life. Very much vibing with Pluto. Bit left field. Here's the top deck. Judgment in the top deck is called the Aeon. So you're thinking about vast periods of time, and again you do get that idea of you know, your periods of time, they begin, they end, and then a new one begins as well. So the idea of Judgment and Pluto. Interestingly, the top deck does assign it to fire. Which is interesting because, you know, it was designed and painted and created in the 40s, between 1943 to 1946. Wasn't commercially available until the 60s, so there was no reason why Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida Hannes couldn't have chucked Pluto in there. Aleister Crowley was a student of astrology as well as tarot, and he did place a lot of significance on Pluto. He really did. So it's a bit of an enigma why it isn't put into the top deck, but there you go. Now, interestingly, just to confuse matters even further, there are some tarot disciplines that have arisen that actually have assigned Uranus. Is that right? Yeah, Uranus to the Last Judgment, which is a bit strange. This is the Hermetic deck by Godfrey Dawson. You got the glyph for Uranus up there, and if we were to bring out the full, you have the glyph for Pluto down there. So, and there are plenty of books out there that do describe that there, and you've got this sort of joint attribution. Personally, I prefer. I mean, I'm quite happy with Mars being Scorpio's planetary ruler, but I'm happy for Pluto to be there too, and I think that fits more with the whole idea of the underworld of death and transformation. So these three cards are very much linked with Scorpio, I believe. I did mention the 8th house. I finally found the card. Again, endings, beginnings, transformation. The 8th house, ruled by Scorpio, is indeed those sorts of vibes. Okay, let's dig a little deeper, shall we? Dig a little deeper with the tarot attributions in the suits. So, Scorpio is the fixed water sign. It is indeed a water sign, despite these quite fiery elements that are coming in there, but that does play an important part. So because it's a fixed sign, we're thinking about the 5, 6 and 7s of the suits. And because it's a water sign, we're thinking about the suit of cups. So we're thinking about the 5, 6 and 7 of cups. So here is the 5 of cups. And yeah, it's generally attributed to this idea of loss or disappointment. The interesting thing about the 5 of cups is you've got this guy who's lamenting his spilt cups here, and he's completely paying no heed to the 2 cups that are behind him that seem to be okay. The other interesting thing that I noticed about the Waitsmith is of these 3 cups that have been turned over, one appears to have some sort of water, and the other 2 some sort of red liquid, which could of course be blood. It could be wine, but you're getting that sense of that the fiery nature and the water nature that are being mixed there. Now the planetary rulers, the 5 of cups is Mars in Scorpio, which is interesting because Mars is very, very happy in Scorpio. So if we were to do Mars in Scorpio, or indeed if we were to do Pluto in Scorpio, I'm going to stick with Mars at the moment. Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio, you get the 5 of cups. But why is that? Because Mars is so happy. Mars is so happy in Scorpio. Why has this happened? Now I like to think of it as because you know, you've got this destructive force that's come along, or indeed you have this judgment that's come along, which has tipped over these cups. Death indeed is marking the end of one era, but there is something new to come along. So I think the 5 of cups does kind of illustrate that quite well. It doesn't explain why Mars, I believe that Mars comes to Scorpio, and because Scorpio is indeed fixed water, and there is an element of being set in their ways, Mars comes along with his force and his gumption, if you like, and that just upsets Scorpio. It just upsets them, and it's like, oh, and that's why they're feeling the disappointment, and the loss, I believe. Here is the Tot 5 of cups, and it is indeed called disappointment. The Lord of Loss, I believe, the Hermetic, the Golden Dawn attribution, and you have this interesting inverted pentagram on here, which is kind of detailing a normal pentagram. You have the spirit at the top and matter at the bottom. An inverted pentagram kind of signifies matter overruling the spirit, which I'm sure a lot of people would attribute to disappointment. You have Mars in Scorpio there. So yeah, that's the 5 of cups. Here's the Santa Muerte deck. Interestingly, you have this skeleton figure, and he's looking down into this pool. He's almost looking at his off-screen reflection, and you've got this maze going on in his mind. So he's trying to reconfigure this idea of loss and disappointment. And yeah, I mean, those sorts of emotions, you do feel them in your heart, but you process them in your head. So you've got this maze that's going on in your head. It's a very interesting image. And like the Night Sun, the Santa Muerte, I think the Santa Muerte does prescribe to the Waitsmith system a little more than the Night Sun, but you do have a good sense of enigma in there. Deviant Moon is much different. Deviant Moon, you do have the imagery of 3 cups down and 2 cups up. You've also got this idea of either blood or wine being spilt. But in the Deviant Moon, the person who has potentially spilled them, it's something that you would probably assume by looking at this card, is being told off by this maternal figure. Again, cracking image. Let's move on to the 6 of Cups, shall we? So in the 6 of Cups, we are thinking about the Sun in Scorpio. So here is the Sun, and the Sun being the great... being the sun, brings light to Scorpio's life. And so here we have the 6 of Cups in the Waitsmith. And in the Waitsmith system, it's really attributed to the idea of nostalgia. You have these 2 children. I do think they're really strange, out of proportion children, I think, personally. But it doesn't matter. But you do get this idea of looking back to your childhood in a very positive sense. The number 6 does give you an idea of stability and a lot of generosity in the Waitsmith system. You're thinking about the the Six of Wands, which is victory, and the Six of Pentacles, which is that kind of charity thing. And again, this slightly larger out of proportion child is giving a cup to the slightly smaller out of proportion child, who looks a little bit like an old lady, but hey. And so yeah, you're thinking about all the good things that have happened in your life, and that sense of nostalgia is that's what you get. So you know, the sun's coming to Scorpio's life. You may very well be coming to an end of, it could be, you know, indeed be the end of a childhood or an end of a period that's gone really, really happy, and you're looking back on it with fond memories and fond eyes, if you like. Let's look at the top deck. So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn attributed the Six of Cups to the Lord of Pleasure. And it's a much purer vibe. So the sun has come into Scorpio and just lights everything up. All the bad things that are behind you, you're looking forward, and things are just so much brighter, is what I feel. Let's just quickly nip through the Six of Cups and the Santa Muerte. Again, I think it does prescribe to this idea of nostalgia, that this woman's holding on to these memories that are very dear to them. She's spilling a bit there, which could very well be quite profound if you're using this deck in a reading. It does give a slightly different bent to it. So that's the Santa Muerte. The Deviant Moon, again, you do get this a reoccurring theme of childhood. You do get this theme of joy and happiness, and they're looking at what we call in Britain a Punch and Judy show, with almost a magician figure and a devil figure. I haven't really thought about this, to be perfectly honest, but yeah, you get that sense of fun and nostalgia. I do really, just to quickly go back to the top deck, I do like the attribution of pleasure, because you know, the Suit of Cups, you've had all that abundance coming through, and you've had all the nice things happening. Then you get the Five of Cups, that throws a little bit of a spanner in the works, and then you get the Six, which is just a nice little beacon between the Five and the Seven. And the Seven of Cups. Before I speak about the Seven, I'm going to do this properly. The court card ruler of both the Five and the Six is the King of Cups. Because Scorpio is a fixed water sign, we are thinking about the solidity of the kings right in the middle there. And the King of Cups, you know, he is that, I use the word patriarchal loosely, but he is that nurturing father figure, but with more of an emphasis on the emotional, on, you know, bringing that sort of empathetic nature to that patriarchal or paternal, to that paternal, unlike the King of Wands, which is, you know, bringing that creative desire, that force, or the King of Pentacles, which is about wealth and material things. The King of Cups is nurturing on an emotional level. Good for him, I say. I do think the King of Cups is a little bit out of place being associated with Scorpio, but that's just my own personal feelings, and I don't suggest that you prescribe to that in any way whatsoever. Okay, so moving on to the Seven of Cups. Absolutely fascinating card. So the Seven of Cups is Venus in Scorpio. Now Venus is in her detriment in Scorpio. The moon is in the fall in Scorpio, which is why I kind of separated moon in Scorpio out from the sun sign and the ascendant. But we're talking about the Seven of Cups here, which is Venus in Scorpio. Now this is an absolutely fascinating card. I love the Seven of Cups because of the dangerous messages that it portends, if you like. So, yep, Venus is indeed represented by the Empress. So the Empress has rocked up to Scorpio with all that transformation and that rebirth, and she actually brings a kind of a sickly feeling, I feel. She brings this idea of it's just a little bit too icky, I think, to be perfectly honest. It's just a little bit too much. The Seven of Cups here. Now, I know there are a lot of tarot readers out there that like to think of the Seven of Cups as hopes and daydreams and you know, dreaming big and looking to the future. But I associate those things with perhaps the 2 and the 3 of Wands, for example. I do think that the Empress coming into Scorpios is not entirely a good thing. Now, Scorpio is indeed a feminine side, so I don't know, maybe it's just a little bit too much that's bringing these vibes to the table, if you like. I think this is much better illustrated by the top deck. The 7 of Cups is the Lord of Debauchery. Now, so yeah, we're thinking about things. We're thinking about illusionary things. We're thinking about things that, you know, you're perhaps spending far too much time on thinking about, and you need to be focusing on real material things at this point. So this fixed emotional sense is just getting too dreamy, and it needs to snap out of it a little bit, if you ask me. I'm just going to leave that there because I might refer to that a little bit later. Here is the Santa Muerte 7 of Cups. You have an interesting, you do have the Sacred Heart emblem that comes up in this deck quite a few times, which is reminiscent of the 3 of Swords. And I do kind of get that it's not there by accident, in particular with this card. I do think it's kind of asking you to actually, you know, snap out of it. Use the mind to overrule the emotions. That's the solution, if you like, which is interesting. Here is the very interesting Deviant Moon 7 of Cups. Now the 7 of Cups here. So this guy here, he's trying to paint a picture. I think he's trying to paint a picture of this cup formation, and he's come up with completely different. I mean, what is he playing at? There's almost a sense of a self-portrait, but again, you're getting this idea of the visions, that the things that you're trying to bring into reality are either it's just too much, or it's just a little bit out of reach. And that's why I think the 7 of Cups is important. I feel like I've spoken too far, and I haven't put enough emphasis on these pip cards here, but there you go. Interestingly, Venus in Scorpio has come across Mars before, when Venus came to Aries with the 4 of Wands, and it's a completely different vibe. I think it's a completely different vibe. But I just wanted to mention that because, you know, the nurturing feminine energy does bring, the Venus does bring a lot of good things to a lot of places, but in this case, coming into Scorpio, not so hot. The court card ruler of the 7 of Cups is the Knight of Wands, and this is very much because you know, you've got this fixed water idea of Scorpio, and towards the end, the mutable decan, if you like, of Scorpio is right next to Sagittarius, and you get that movement, that idea of travel, but we'll get into that once we talk about Sagittarius. So that's Scorpio. Now, as I've said before, Scorpio, so much depth. I could probably make this video 3 times as long talking about it, and you know, I'm already thinking about things that I've forgotten to say. For example, Scorpio does cover the period of Samhain, or Halloween, which for a lot of pagan disciplines and cultures is indeed the new year. It's the new year for witches as well. So this idea of rebirth, of transformation, of really bringing emotional depth to the table is very, very strong, which is one of the many reasons why I love Scorpio and I love the Death card. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say at this point. Sorry for rambling, but that's it. I'm the Hidden Hermit. Thank you very much for watching.